7 second countdown.
Okay, stand by. Have a good show, gentlemen. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, how's everyone doing? This is the Concern Forum. I'm your host, Bob Gums, and the truth does matter. Today we got a real interesting and, how should I say, informative program. I have my good friend, Mr. David Strom. If you've watched this show for any length of time, you're quite familiar with this gentleman. And what can I say? Educator, civil rights activist, Air Force pilot. My God, we don't have another 5 hours to list all this gentleman's accomplishments, but he's got the chops. Believe me, he has the chops. I want to talk about a variety of things today, basically around the same subject: what's happening with America. Now, you open just about any paper, you look at any program, and you say, people are saying, the country's, everything's so crazy, the country's being ripped apart. Well, and you have to excuse my phone. I know sometimes it has the habit of just being a perpetual nuisance. Let me see if I can turn it down, because I'm not really expecting any calls today, at least not right now. So let's see if we can kill it for a little while. Oh, but you know something? It might be a good idea to do something about the timing. I honestly think that the problem that we have, getting back to the subject about what's wrong with America, actually, nothing is wrong with America. The problem is that we've had, how should I put this? Such a problem with not recognizing problems. I realize that sounds a bit redundant, but let me try and take a shot at it. The problem is that when you go through life and you don't want to recognize the fact that you have problems, well, from past experience, I'm sure, that's when things really get worse. And this thing of race, that is the core of many of our problems. I would say of most of the problems that we have in this country. Because what happens when you just think in terms of race, number one, and I will say this time after time after time, there's no such thing as race. There's only one race, and that's the human race, okay? Modern man, as we know him or her, started somewhere in North Central Africa, okay? Somewhere around, I guess you would call it Western Kenya, okay? And humanity spread out from there. And this whole thing about, well, that's a white person, that's a red person, black person, what have you. Those are political constructs, okay? If I choose to marry a white woman, I can have a child by her. As we have seen for the last 300 some odd years, or 400 years in this country, okay? A zebra or a giraffe cannot intimate with a possum, all right? Two entirely different species. I mean, they're both animals, or what we call animals, but they're two different two different things. But an Asian and a Caucasian, they're the same. They're the same thing. All right, they come from the same. What's that? Homo sapien. And what we have allowed, is always a certain group. Your dad ever tell you, son, especially the guys out here, he would say, son, no matter how far you think that you've made it, no matter where you think you are, there's always going to be an asshole, or there's always going to be a bastard around somewhere. There's always going to be a son of a bitch that's going to try and create problems. And what we have done, just talking about America right now, we have allowed the SOBs to basically call the shots. Now, what's one of the biggest brouhahas that the Republicans want to talk about? CRT, critical race theory. Now, the average Republican wouldn't understand about CRT if it snuck up and bit him on the ass, okay? All CRT is just history, okay? The history. Black folks were brought here as slaves. The history. Originally, it wasn't just a thing about slavery, because you find blacks sitting in the first General Assemblies in the 1620s. But over a period of time, the SOBs of the world thought it was more economical to just keep dark-skinned people in virtual slavery. And the hate, the degradation came on top. In other words, you make a reason why this person is a slave. Oh, well, because he's different. Or maybe the religion is different. Or maybe he was just meant to be a beast of burden. And it's funny because a lot of people don't know that about 20% of the slaves that were brought over here were practicing Muslims, and another 20% were practicing Catholics, okay, because of Europe's exposure to Africa below the Sahara. A lot of people don't know that the Portuguese had an embassy in the Congo, that they had an African bishop in the Congo who had been trained for the priesthood in Rome. So this idea of Africa, especially Africa below the Sahara, being something so degraded is absolute nonsense. How many Africans do you think were taken out of Africa because of slavery? About 20 million. Well, you have to remember that most of the slaves that came over here, we're talking about the continent's best and brightest. Your warrior class, your religious class, your scholars, all right? You're strong, intellectually and physically.
They were kidnapped Africans, not slaves.
That's correct. The best and the brightest, the term we like to use so much. That's who came over here. And the majority of these people did not come to what we know as the United States. They went all up Mexico, they in the American Southwest, Canada, South America, and the Caribbean, which is part of my heritage on my father's side. And I guess my mom, her folks were just lucky, I guess, that they wound up being in Virginia. But there is a lot of things that people, especially our fellow, for lack of a better term, white citizens, need to know. Now, we don't have respect for education in this country. Well, that's why we call people what? Eggheads, nerds, what have you, okay? But we have to get over that because our ignorance is killing us. And one other point I want to make, I'm talking slow. Anytime you hear me talking slow, it's because I'm really thinking about something, okay? And since, like my chief when I was in the Navy used to say, oh, Gums is thinking, we smell wood burning. Well, it's burning. It's burning real bad. Because in my introduction, I left out something. What I left out, right now, in this time period, the greatest danger that America, the United States of America faces is the Republican Party. And I know, you're talking about Trump. Remember, hate, ignorance, the hatred of critical thinking, all that was alive and well with the Republican Party before Donald Trump came on the scene. What Trump has been able to do, unfortunately, he's been able to amplify that. And, well, we see the causes now. We literally have to fear losing what little freedom, and I emphasize little, what little freedom that we have in this country. You got a Republican Party that says, well, we're going to tell you who can vote. We're going to tell you how to count those votes. And we're going to tell you if we like the way the votes were counted. And we're going to tell you if we accept the validity of the election or not. Just us. And my friends, that is the recipe for a banana republic. That's the recipe for a dictatorship. And to my friends in Florida, and especially to my Cuban American friends and my Venezuelan friends, let me tell you something. My background consists, as I said earlier, of both immigrant from the Caribbean and native born from Virginia. My family goes back to about the 1680s, 1690s. So family legend has it. So I speak now as a native-born American. I am so happy when I see immigrants coming to this country. When I read the words about the New World, remember? That's what they dreamed about back in the 1500s and the 1600s. Oh, yes, we can escape from the oppressiveness of the Catholic Church. We can escape from the rigid class system of Europe. And we can come to the New World where men can be free. But what did they do? In many cases, they turned America into a sad imitation of the old world. That's what they did to the New World. I really pray that my friends from Cuba and from Venezuela and a couple of those other Latin American countries, I really hope they stop and think. because I know that there is like a big bandwagon in Florida. Remember, I was stationed in Florida for 3 years, probably the most miserable time of my life. Um, I think that's what eventually killed my wife, because Florida is such an environmental toilet. Um, Whatever that thing, same thing that killed Bernie Mac, eventually killed my wife. And we were pregnant at the time I was stationed down there. And maybe that whatever that was floating in the air there in North Florida, in Jacksonville, well, it's my belief that that's what killed her. And I didn't have the money to afford a good attorney to sue the state, but that's another story. But I'm saying all this just so you know. I'm being honest about it, being transparent. I have no love for Florida, okay? However, when I see the way the Cuban Americans and other Latin Americans who have escaped to Florida, right, organize themselves as soldiers for the Republican Party, I feel sad. I really do, because it's, I'm watching my family. Latin America, the Caribbean, like I say, half of me, those are my people. Spanish, French, Dutch, English, they're all mixed down there, even though they try and pretend that that's not the case. When they come up here to the mainland, as they call it, they put on a different suit of clothes. But if you go to Cuba right now, this minute, with the cameras and everything, you'll see for yourself, those people are not Anglo, right? But yet, you throw yourself into the Republican Party, especially Donald Trump's Republican Party, and I don't understand, because you cry about, oh, well, we're against communism and socialism and dictatorship. Well, if that's the case, why are you hanging out with a party that believes in racial discrimination of some form or another? Why would you be with a party that applauds an American president that does the same thing that the Castro family did? As a matter of fact, Trump did better than Fidel Castro. They used the government as a piggy bank for their family and their close business associates. And I can't understand why any Cuban immigrant, especially one that's really hyped up about, what Castro did, why would you support a party that's led by a guy that's worse than he was? I don't understand that. You can be passionate and still have a certain amount of logic. That's what I don't, that's one of the things that really has puzzled me for the last couple of years. And now that same Republican Party, somebody goes to one of their, what's that crap they do, the CPAC, conservative, whatever. Hey, man, this guy basically says, well, Joe Biden was trying to get 70% of people protected from the disease. He didn't make it. It's only 60-something. And they applaud. They applaud. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Don't you realize that every person that's not getting vaccinated puts themselves in danger of dying? You're playing suicide. You're playing Russian roulette, not just with your life, but for the life of your family, your friends, and your fellow citizens. I'm sorry. This is a pandemic. 4 million people so far around the world have died from this horrible disease. And quite frankly, Fox News the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and these crazy ass Fox competitors for nuttiness. What is that? OAN station, and there's another one I can't think of it. Um, here in New York, it's like 102. You know what I'm talking about? Cable station here. These, those people that I just mentioned, those people and organizations, they need to be sued for every death. And I'm really hyper about this because I have a grandchild in Houston, Texas. And I am so, well, that's a family thing, I understand, but I am so worried about him. As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of changing my living arrangements because I want to see, talk his mother, especially as he starts to get older, into coming up here in the Northeast. Because this is insanity, what's happening to this country. Florida, Texas. Now these people are saying, yeah, go ahead, buy yourself a gun. Don't worry about getting it registered. You have a divided nation. Unfortunately, you have so-called, I won't say racial issues, but ethnic issues, political issues. And so you're going to add to all the pressures by telling people, yeah, just walk down the street with a gun. Don't worry about having it registered. Oh, and don't forget, don't let anybody give you the vaccine that might save the life of you or your family and friends. We are through the looking glass, folks. And we need to understand that and to somehow rectify that. Otherwise, there's not going to be a United States of America. That needs to be fixed. You see, it's okay to have problems as long as you recognize them and you start to deal with them. But at the rate this country is going, we're not going to be around to do that. And I think that would be a shame, quite frankly. Don't you think it would be a shame, David?
Well, you've covered a number of topics here. And first of all, I want to make one correction. I was an Air Force radar operations officer, even though, I'm a pilot and an instructor pilot, and I trained many pilots.
Oh, you were?
And I ran a radar station and that sort of operations.
So you were a scope dope. I didn't know that. All this time I've known you, I didn't know that.
That was my main job.
I'll be damned.
Even though civilian, I've been a pilot and have been an instructor pilot.
Why the hell didn't you work for the airlines in the airports?
Well, when I came along, truth be told, they wouldn't hire anyone that looked like me as a pilot for any airline.
Oh, you had a melanin problem.
The Tuskegee Airmen, and I'm not a Tuskegee Airman.
Right.
None of them got a job at an airline. Because they wouldn't hire
That's right.
Black pilots until they were sued, and then they started slowly hiring some. So the point is that I just want to make that clear. As far as the health issue with vaccines and whatnot, all I could say is that people are responsible for making their own decisions about what kind of medical treatment they take. So I wouldn't argue with that. And some people have different opinions, maybe religiously or for other reasons, and people ought to have a choice. I know the military, I've heard, they don't force the troops to take the vaccine for the COVID-19. So there are a lot of differences of opinion, and I just stand on letting people decide. I don't believe in making it a forced thing to have someone take any particular medical treatment.
Um, well, you're going to hear it right now. I'm talking to our family out there in the audience. I totally disagree with you. And I'll tell you exactly why. Number one, as far as the military is concerned, that's going to change. I have it from reliable sources. That is going to change, okay? And that one of the, how should I say this? One of the requirements for you to be able to be in the military is to be able to follow all legal orders, okay? There is nothing illegal about being given medicine for your health. I was in 3 different branches of the military. Each time I got my butt pinholed with all sorts of vaccines, okay? And it's necessary. So knock that one down. Now, as far as civilians are concerned, that is rapidly changing too because of the horror of this disease and the way that this thing is spreading. And like I say, this is not just a thing here in America about, oh, well, the United States is trying to turn us all into zombies or something like that. That's why they want us to get vaccinated. No, it's because this is a pandemic. This is a disease that actually kills. Me personally, I have seen people with the COVID. I have seen them die. It is real, and I don't ever want to get it. That's why in middle February and in the first week of March, I went right up to the Bronx Veterans Hospital, and I got my shots. And I was fine when I got the shot. I've been fine after I got the shot. This is what, July, March, April, May, June. No side effects. I'm the same damn fool I was before I got the shots.
Well, there are people who say there are alternative methods of protecting oneself. So people can look into it and, take that under advisement.
As a nation, we can't do that. The reason being because, so this is what really ticks me off. Now, number one, medical knowledge that we pursue now, or that we practice now, this has been like about 5,000 years in development from the ancient Africans in Egypt. Yes, Egypt is in Africa. To the Greeks, to Pasteur, to Lister. As a matter of fact, did you have, good, I'm glad we brought this up. You know where vaccination comes from, right, folks? It comes from Africa. A Yankee doctor, I can't think of his name, back in the 1700s, he's the one that started vaccination here in America because some black people, I believe this was I think it was in Massachusetts, they were worried at that time about smallpox. And the Africans told him that, well, we have the same problem, but what we do, we take a little sample and we inject ourselves. By injection with them, that they made a cut and they took a little bit from a diseased source and they built up their immunity. It's funny when you start studying history, not propaganda, but real history. a lot of the things that people in America take for granted started in Africa. So anyway, folks, I just wanted to bring that up. That's where vaccination originally comes from. See? We cannot throw away the last 5,000 years of scientific achievement because the Republican Party saw attacking vaccination as a way to get into the heads of white working class America. Okay? That's number one. And to tell you the truth, I'm pretty much, I guess you can call me a vaccination Nazi now, because I believe that if you don't have proof of vaccination, you shouldn't be allowed in the subways, you shouldn't be allowed in the movie theaters, you shouldn't be allowed to work and run other people, you shouldn't be allowed to go to school. And now, see, this is to show you how the Republican Party has played with people's heads. You do realize that if you're not vaccinated, you can't go to kindergarten, grammar school, junior high school, or college if you don't have a shot record. Now, that's the law in the United States of America. So this is not anything new or different, even though you have certain parties that want you to think it is, because they feel that they can excite you, just like they feel that they can say CRT, critical race theory. A lot of white Americans, especially working class, they have no idea what that is. But it sounds sexy, it sounds black, and that will get them excited. And that's what the Republican Party and their right-wing friends have been doing. Now, I mean, it's cool to raise money, to get money out of people, to scare them to death, but that's not the way to run a first world democratic country. And one of the reasons why we're not as democratic as we're supposed to be is because of tricks and tactics just like this on the part of the Republican Party. That's why I say that they are the danger to America, and they should be looked upon the same way we look upon the Nazi Party in this country, or we used to look upon the Nazi Party in this country. I don't know, because since Trump, it now seems even the Nazis have become acceptable. But yeah, that's how I would do it. And guess what? It's starting to happen. More and more universities are saying, hey, if you don't have your shots for COVID, you ain't coming in here. Now, here's a nice computer, and you got a nice room, and you can make your classes, turn on the dial, but you ain't coming in here. And I think that that's a good thing. Because why should I get sick because you don't like modern medicine? See? And that is, see, this is the thing that I don't know what the hell's happened to this country. It's like we have forgotten everything that we learned. You know, you got some Karen, oh, well, governments don't have the right to, oh, yes, they do. Ever hear of a lady called Typhoid Mary? You know where she died? You know where she passed away? In a jail cell. I mean, it wasn't a terrible cell, but she was behind bars. She could not go and come as she pleased. You know why? Because she was an Irish cook, all right? Apparently, she was a pretty damn good cook. But people started to notice that every family that she worked for, people would start dying. And they finally found out that she had a disease called typhoid. And they took her to court, and they said, look, Mary, it's not your fault. You did not invent typhoid. But you can't be a food handler. You cannot be a cook. She said, okay, I'll stop cooking. But you know what? She lied. And a few months later, they found out that she was at it again, that she was cooking again. And she was warned again. And she did the same thing. went back to cooking after she told the judge that she would stop. So you know what they did? They put her butt in jail. I think, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, because I was out there when I had my spinal surgery, and yeah, Roosevelt Island. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, that's where she died at, Roosevelt Island, incarcerated because she would not obey the health rules of the state of New York. This was back in 1880, 1890 something, okay? So anybody tells you that what the government is doing is unconstitutional, they're full of crap, okay? It's just like if I have a house, okay, and it's so nasty that it's declared a health hazard, inhabitable for human occupation. And they put a sign on the, right in the front door. If I try to go back in that house to live, I'm going to jail. If anyone tries to go into that house and live, they're going to jail. It's just like these gun nuts who say, well, you can't do anything to impinge upon my right to have a firearm. Well, they're full of it, and they're also lying. All through the West, you had towns. You can't carry a weapon on Sunday. You can't carry a weapon in the main street of town. You can't bring a weapon into this particular saloon. Plenty of laws like that. So the idea of absolutes, there's no absolute in anything, in life or in our Constitution. I don't know how people forget that, but they sure have. And the Republicans, they have done a disservice to their party. They have done a disservice to the nation. Remember, this Republican Party, the modern Republican Party, in the beginning, is the one that got us the Civil Rights Bill that King and Abernathy and all those people were fighting for. They were the ones that threw their combined weight to get the right to vote for Black Americans and for all Americans, getting rid of the poll tax and all that sort of thing, right? But it seems that from the mid-'60s onward, they got on a steady march to the right. Periodically, you've had people that have tried to pull the Republican Party back from that cliff. And they succeed for a little bit, but then they get right back on that same clown train. And now you got the situation where the Republican Party is the greatest danger that this country is facing. And Joe Biden is right about that since the Civil War. But I'm going to tell you something. The Democratic Party had better start showing some testosterone. Because if Black people lose our right to vote, if we don't crack down on these vaccine nuts, there will be no sense in going, for the Democratic Party. They have to stop worrying about being nice. They truly do. Now, David, what do you think? Because you're a former educator.
Well, I've just listened to what you said, and to be clear, I don't belong to any party. I'm independent. And I can remember a time when most what we call Black people here belong to the Republican Party.
That's right.
And, many people in the Black community were staunch Republicans.
That's correct.
Okay.
My parents were one of them.
I was never a member of the Republican Party, and I decided to be independent because
that's cool too.
In my case, I thought about things And I thought about the fact that we're living in a country where we don't have a collection of parties that are viable. We only have what we call a two-party system,
Yeah.
which essentially both capitalist parties that the Republicans are far to the right, and the Democrats have moved more and more to the right. Now, when we had the Great Depression with Roosevelt, he saw that there was a chance of rebellion. So that's when he convinced the Republicans and the people that could do something about it to create all those things like Social Security, the things that all people had, these type of welfare programs that would benefit some people, and that was done to blunt what was happening at that time with the unions, with the communists, with the socialists, and people were up in arms about what was happening in the Great Depression. However, after the Second World War, just like many times when people are given certain things, they try to take things back. In 1947, the Taft-Hartley law was put into effect, which had something called the right to work, and that was an attack on unions. And today in the United States, I think more than half the states have right to work laws to blunt the effect of unions. And that suits the capitalist ruling class that has a great influence in this country, and that makes them very happy because capitalism is something that is essentially against unions, because capitalism means getting resources, human resources and physical resources, and making profit. And they certainly didn't want unions, so they're doing very well in getting rid of unions in many, many places, to the point where very few people in the country belong to unions today. So we're at a stage where the small elite ruling class is in effect today. They have moved on to what they call neoliberalism. Neoliberalism has to do with taking everything public and turning it into private. And that's going on all over the country. In the military, years ago, very little of the military budget was in the hands of private contractors. Nowadays, the military budget, at least half of it is going to military contractors. The schools, they're trying to close down the public schools, and an example of that is what they call charter schools, where private entities are running the schools with public money, you see. So every area of the country, what they can do in terms of turning in a profit by taking away anything that's done publicly with public devices and engineering and workers, and turning it into private. And that is what we have in this country and in much of the world, especially in Central and South America, neoliberalism.
Now, some of that, what you just said, hang on a second. To my folks my friends in the back, could you keep an eye on my time for me? Because I don't want
You're
to.
about 45 in.
45 minutes. We're 45 minutes in, right?
Yes,
Okay. It's good. So we still have about 15 minutes left.
12.
12 minutes left. Okay, excellent. There are some things that, excuse me. I'll have to get back to you. I'm on the air right now. Now, I agree with you to a large extent when you talk about charter schools. Charter schools were never meant to do the job that they're doing now. But by the same token, I also have a big problem with the city bureaucracy. Just talking about New York as an example. As an example, we have a very backwards educational system in this city, in the public sphere, and that has to be rectified. I feel that anything that's good, that's productive, that is going on in charter schools can be easily mandated for the public schools. And I really feel that that's the way that situation should be handled. Now, as far as when you talk about the unions, that kind of dovetails into something else that really bugs me. White working class Americans, I don't know, and the Republicans, they know that. And they see that as a weakness on the part of Americans that helps to keep them in power. Remember, it was the guys with the hard hats, it was the union shop stewards that put Ronald Reagan in the White House. It was the same type of folks that put the Bushes in the White House. And the thing that hurts me the most, I don't care if you're talking about race with the critical theory, I don't care. What hurts me, I don't like to see anybody being played a chump out of, okay? When I see working class white Americans, guys I served in the service with, fall for this Republican line, it really saddens me no end. Because what you just spoke about, it's all part of this big scam to make chumps out of the American people. Because with the Republican Party, their greatest success, and I mean, I give my enemy respect. I give credit where credit is due. The greatest success that the Republican Party has had in modern America is to get, and I'm going to come right out and say it has been that great success for them has been to get white Americans to vote against their own best interest. But see, that is what is coming back around to destroy America. The Republican Party has left our country wide open, not to immigrants coming across the border, but they have left it open to nations that really would be happy to see America destroyed, to see America torn apart, to see America become a helpless giant. And that's what the Republican Party has done, and they have done it as I said, by keeping white Americans in such a state of fear, hatred, and confusion
Right.
that these people go out and vote against their own best interest.
All right. My comment on that is, in order to rule, in order to control the population, you have to do two things. One, you have to make people afraid. You have to give them enemies. You got to search for enemies sometimes when there's no enemy. So that's number one. That's what you have to do, and that's what the ruling politicians do very well. You make, whether it's the Vietnamese, the Russian, the Chinese, or whatever enemy you can come up with, you give them an enemy, and then you can manipulate them. The other thing that we think about that is very important for those devils who rule the world is that you have to divide people up, and they're brilliant at that. They find all kind of ways to divide people up. So divide and conquer and give people enemies, and that's the formula for ruling. And the heck with what the people need and want. They don't get what they want or need, but you give them an enemy and you divide and conquer them, and that's what we have right here.
Well, that's what I'm going to be. That's what I'm going to be putting out in the street, because I'm looking at doing a demonstration first on 125th Street, and
Very
then
important.
And then to take it
Now,
around the country.
That is where it is because
Yeah. Now I'm running out of time here, so just let me get another 2 points out. The Pope yesterday came with a statement that said that all advanced nations, all nations, period, should have, what did he call it? Universal health care. The same thing you've been fighting for, right? And that has blown the socks off of a lot of Catholics who have called themselves Republicans. Personally, to me, that's like being a Catholic Republican is like being a Catholic who believes in the Nazi Party, quite frankly.
Right.
But
you know,
that's
I
where I
got
see
some
it.
final words here. If you want change, you're hitting right at it now, because the way you're going to make a change is demonstration. No change is going to be made until people get in the streets and demonstrate.
Okay, now one last point, and it's this, because I know that we're getting ready to get shut down here. I'm running out of time. I've been thinking a lot about the death penalty. Generally, I am against it. But I am sick. And this is the type of thing that the Republicans will use to try and stop any progress that Democratic politicians are trying to push for, such as universal health care. When they say the Democratic Party is a party of crime, I say the Republican Party is the party of death. Now, that's my answer to them on that. But within the community of color where all this crime is occurring, now, don't get me wrong, white people murder, steal, just like human beings around the planet. But in America, crime in the black community has always been looked upon as some kind of, Godzilla or something of that nature. Now, I was reading the news on the way down here, and like, damn, about 4 or 5 murders. Queens, Bronx, your folks out there in Brooklyn. And so, yes, we have a racist law enforcement system. That's what we're working on trying to correct. But by the same token, the communities themselves have to start being responsible. I'm sick of reading about little 1-year-old babies getting shot in the head because the idiots that were doing the shooting weren't never in the military, never learned anything about fire discipline or coordination, and they shoot, and they don't give a damn about this innocent bystander. And 9.5 times out of 10, that takes place right in the black community. And something needs to be, something needs to be said about that. If a cop does that, everybody's raising hell. But what happens about that 1-year-old kid? Or a little 5-year-old boy that was just out in front of his own house playing? Black folks and Hispanic folks deserve and have the right to peace and safety, just like folks in the suburbs. And there was a time in America where if you wound up shooting an innocent child because of some crime or some vengeance or whatever, you didn't have to worry about the police finding you. The community would take care of that themselves. And the cops would get a note, yeah, there's a body stuffed in the garbage can. This is the guy that killed that little girl. But it seems that we don't have that community spirit anymore. We don't have the right to shoot each other. I can't tell that cracker sheriff or that cracker policeman who acts like Bull Connors, I can't put him in his place and at the same time ignore you who have the same melanin features that I have. I can't give you a license to shoot me or to shoot other people in our community. That's insanity. That's not intelligence, like Malcolm X would say. That's not being intelligent. Black lives do matter. And they have to matter not only to law enforcement, they have to matter to black people. And I don't understand, why should it be so hard to put that message out there? I want that to be your last,
Well, one of the things that happens in a society like this is internalized oppression. When some of the people who are victimized the most turn on their own and denigrate each other. So we call that internalized oppression. And a good example of it is in my book, where a black student I was getting ready to train as a pilot didn't want to hear anything about black pilots. He told me he just wanted to hear about white pilots. So that's a good example of internalized oppression.
To me, another example, this stuff that comes out of Atlanta, my girls, the pole dancers, listen, I'm familiar with the butts of naked women. And quite frankly, in my own free time, I think that they're quite enjoyable. But to have that, or to make it seem that that's all black television is about, gangsters, women sliding up and down poles. We have fought so long to be a part of the media, and this is what we give the world? A basketball player, a football player, a nice looking sweetie on a pole, and gangbangers. I'm sorry. My history, my culture is a lot more important than that. And I'm not putting those people down, okay? But I just believe, I used to be a jock myself. And yeah, I spent plenty of, especially before I was married, I spent plenty of time watching pole dances. But right now, with what we're going through in this country, one step away from being taken over by fascists, we have a internal crime rate that's going through the roof with our blood flowing through the streets. we feel that law enforcement is racially against us, you're going to tell me that we don't have anything better to show the world about what we're about? It's like we enjoy being stereotyped. And I don't think that that's helpful. I really don't. So, all you people of color out there, my black and Latino brothers and sisters, you want to get mad at me? Feel free. But I think that there's more to us than that. None of what I mentioned just now are bad, but I'm just saying that there's more to us than that. There are more dimensions than that. And I just wanted to make sure that I said that. We're just about in, right? Well, folks, next week, same time, same channel. Hopefully a little better world, we pray. Listen, this is Robert Gumbs, the Concerned Forum, with my guest, David Strong. And I want to thank you for allowing us into your homes. And once again, see you next week. God bless.
And you're clear. Very nice.
That was excellent, David.